Ji-won stood alone in the grand hall of the Valerian Science Institute, watching the sunset through the crystalline walls. The city of Velar Prime stretched out below her, all gleaming towers and bright lights. The sky was turning purple and gold, beautiful colors that she had seen 1,000 times before. But today, the beauty felt like a lie. Today, everything felt broken. She held the letter in her hands. It was not written on paper, because Valerians did not use such old things. Instead, the words glowed on a small glass device, cold and bright. The words were simple, but they cut deep into her heart. After 15 cycles, her marriage was over. Teo had left her. Not with anger, not with tears. He had left her with polite words and empty explanations. Ji-won had been a respected scientist. She had studied genetics and biology her whole life. She had published many papers. Other scientists knew her name and respected her work. Colleagues came to her with their questions. Young students wanted to learn from her. She was smart, talented, and dedicated. She had everything that a Valerian woman should want. Everything except the one thing that mattered most to her society. Children. She could not have them. The doctors had been honest, though their honesty had felt like punishment. Something in her genetic code did not match with Teo's. The science was clear and cold. The chance of pregnancy was less than 1%. For Valerians, this was a death sentence to a marriage. It did not matter how much Teo said he loved her. It did not matter how kind he was, or how many years they had spent together. His family had needs. His lineage needed to continue. His name needed to be carried forward by children who were truly his. The letter said he had already chosen someone else. Her name was In-soo, and she was young, healthy, and fertile. Teo had met her at a family gathering 3 months ago. Ji-won remembered that gathering. She remembered how In-soo had smiled at Teo across the room. She remembered how Teo had smiled back. The words in the letter were respectful. They praised Ji-won's intelligence and her character. They said he would always admire her. They said that she was a wonderful woman, but that they were not compatible for the future of his bloodline. The letter suggested she keep their expensive home, his family's gift. It suggested she continue her work at the Institute. It was a generous divorce by Valerian standards, almost an apology. But it was still a rejection. It was still the message that she was not good enough. Ji-won had known this might happen. She had known it from the first time the doctors explained her condition. But knowing something and living through it were very different things. She had hoped, secretly, that their love would be strong enough, that Teo would choose her over his family's wishes, that he would say, "It does not matter. I want you, and that is enough." But he had not said that. He had chosen his family, his name, his future children with another woman. The next morning, Ji-won went to the Institute. She thought that work would help. Work always helped. She could lose herself in numbers and data and the mysteries of biology. She could forget about her personal failure by focusing on the success of her research. But the Institute felt different now. People looked at her with pity in their eyes. Some people looked away when she walked past. Colleagues who had been friendly became distant. In the lunchroom, conversation stopped when she entered. The message was clear. She was no longer a respected scientist. She was a failed wife. She was a woman who could not do the most basic thing that a Valerian woman was supposed to do. Dr. Kwan, who had been her friend for many years, finally said something directly. "Everyone knows about Teo and In-soo," she said quietly. "I am sorry, Ji-won, but you should consider taking some time away. Let people forget. Then perhaps you can come back. Take time away," which meant hiding, which meant admitting that she was ashamed, which meant letting everyone know that she agreed with their judgment. She was broken. She was defective. She did not deserve to walk through these halls where success and fertility and family were everything. That night, Ji-won made a decision. She would request a transfer. There was a research station far away, on the border between Valerian space and human space. It was not an important assignment. Scientists went there when their careers needed rest. It was quiet. It was lonely. It was perfect. Her supervisor approved the transfer without asking questions. Of course he did. Everyone wanted her to go away. On the day she left, very few people came to say goodbye. She packed her things into a small ship and watched Valar Prime disappear behind her as she flew away. The crystalline towers became smaller and smaller until they were just points of light, and then they were gone entirely. The research station appeared on her screen after 2 days of traveling. It was not beautiful like Valar Prime. It was a simple structure, built for function and not for beauty. It had been constructed by many different species over many years, and you could see the different building styles mixed together. But there was something about it that felt honest. It was not trying to be something it was not. Ji-won landed her ship and gathered her few belongings. As she walked into the station, she did not know that her life was about to change completely. She did not know that a human would come to this station with 4 children. She did not know that one small act of kindness would heal her broken heart. She only knew that she was running away from a world that said she was not good enough. She only knew that she was leaving behind a name and a reputation that no longer meant anything to her. What she did not know was that she was running toward something beautiful. She did not know that her story was not over. In fact, it was only beginning. 3 months had passed since Ji-won arrived at the research station. She had fallen into a quiet routine that suited her broken spirit. She woke at the same time every day. She went to the biological laboratory and worked with specimens and data. She ate alone. She slept. She repeated this pattern every single day, and the pattern was comfortable because it asked nothing from her except to keep moving forward. The station was home to many different species. Humans, Valerians, Krell, and several others lived and worked together in this neutral space. Ji-won tried to interact with no one. She did her work well enough, but she did not smile or make small talk. The other scientists left her alone, which is what she wanted. Then James Robertson arrived. He came with no warning on a transport ship carrying 4 children and more luggage than seemed possible. He was a human engineer from Earth, contracted to work on the station's main infrastructure systems. The project would take many months. He needed to live here with his family. Ji-won noticed him first in the common dining area. It was impossible not to notice. He looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. There was a kind of deep weariness in his eyes, the look of someone carrying a weight that was too heavy for one person alone. His 4 children surrounded him like small planets orbiting a sun. The oldest was a girl, about 8 years old, with braids and a serious face. The next was a boy, maybe 6, who talked constantly. Then came a smaller girl and a tiny boy, probably 4 and 3 years old. James was trying to cut up food on his plate while simultaneously preventing the smallest boy from pouring juice on himself and answering questions from the oldest girl about how the station's oxygen systems worked. It was chaos, but it was loving chaos. Ji-won could see how much he cared about these children, even as she could also see how tired he was. She looked away and returned to her meal, trying not to think about how her own life might have looked if things had been different. If she could have had children. If Teo had wanted to try harder. If her own world had not been so quick to judge her. But the next week, Ji-won met James's daughter by accident. Her name was Hai-na, and she was lost in the research laboratory section of the station. Ji-won was returning from her work when she heard the crying. It was soft at first, then louder. She followed the sound and found the girl sitting on the floor in one of the biology wings, tears running down her face. Her small hands were shaking. "I cannot find the way back. Haina said between sobs. My father will be so worried. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I just wanted to see what was in here, and then I did not know where I was, and now I am lost. Jiwon could have simply walked the girl back to her father. That would have been the kind thing. But something opened inside her, something that had been locked away since the day Teo left. She sat down beside Haina, not rushing, not treating the girl's fear as something small or unimportant. It is okay, Jiwon said softly. You are not lost now. I am here. Who are you? Haina asked, her tears slowing a little. My name is Jiwon. I work in this laboratory, and you are in one of the most special places on this whole station. Haina looked around at the tanks of creatures and the glowing displays on the walls. Really? It is special? Very special, Jiwon said. These creatures here in this tank, they come from a world where the water is purple instead of blue. And do you see those lights? Those are not lights. Those are actually living things that make their own light, just like a star. Haina's tears stopped completely. Her eyes grew wide. She had forgotten about being lost. She had forgotten about her fear. All she could think about was the purple water and the living lights. Jiwon spent the next hour with this small human girl, explaining the laboratory in a way that made everything seem magical and wonderful. She showed Haina the creatures and told her stories about where they came from and how they lived. She answered every question with patience and kindness. When they finally walked back toward the residential section, Haina held Jiwon's hand tightly. You are the nicest person I have met on this station, she said. Will you be my friend? Jiwon felt her chest tighten with an emotion she thought had died. Yes, she said. I would very much like to be your friend. James was standing near the residential quarters when they arrived, panic written all over his face. When he saw his daughter, he rushed forward and picked her up, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. He was shaking with relief. Haina, where were you? I was so worried, he said, and then he looked at Jiwon with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much for finding her. I do not know what I would have done if something had happened to her. She was not lost, Jiwon said quietly. She was just exploring. James put Haina down and looked at Jiwon more carefully. He saw the sadness in her eyes. And he saw something else too. He saw someone who had spoken to his daughter with real care, someone who had made her feel safe. I am James Robertson, he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. I am sorry my daughter wandered off. She is curious about everything. Jiwon shook his hand. His grip was warm and strong. I am Jiwon. And your daughter is very intelligent. She asked excellent questions about the biology laboratory. She does that, James said, and for the first time a real smile crossed his tired face. She wants to understand how everything works. Would you maybe be willing to watch the children sometimes while I work? I know it is a lot to ask, but childcare on the station is limited, and I need someone I can trust. Jiwon should have said no. She should have returned to her safe routine, her quiet life where nothing could hurt her anymore. But she looked at Haina's hopeful face, and she looked at James's exhausted but kind expression, and something inside her broke open. Yes, she heard herself say, I can help. That night, after James had taken his children back to their quarters, Jiwon stood alone in her room. For the first time in months, she felt something other than pain. She felt needed. She felt like maybe, in some small way, she might still have value after all. 3 weeks into helping James with his children, Jiwon realized that she was happy. It was a strange feeling, and at first she did not trust it. Happiness seemed dangerous now. Happiness could be taken away. But as the days passed, the feeling grew stronger, and she began to accept it. Every day after her work at the laboratory, she would meet James and the children in one of the station's common areas. The older two, Hai-Na and Min-jun, would have homework to do. Ji-won would help them with their studies. She explained difficult concepts in ways that made sense to them. She answered their endless questions with patience and real interest. Min-jun was particularly fascinated by Valerian technology. He would ask Ji-won about how the communication systems worked, and how the artificial gravity was maintained, and why Valerian ships were shaped differently from human ships. Ji-won found that she loved explaining these things. She had never been asked to teach a young person before. She had taught university students, but this was different. Min-jun looked at her like she was the smartest person in the universe, and this feeling was better than any research award she had ever received. The younger children, So-ri and Tae-sung, simply loved her company. So-ri, who was 4 years old, would hold Ji-won's hand while they walked through the station's observation deck. Tae-sung, the smallest at 3 years old, had started calling her Star Lady because Ji-won had told them about the stars and planets she had seen from her ship when she traveled to the station. Now, whenever he saw her, he would run toward her with his arms spread wide, shouting, "Star Lady! Star Lady!" No one had ever been so happy to see Ji-won before. One evening, James invited her to have dinner with the family in their quarters instead of in the common dining area. Ji-won was nervous about this. It felt like crossing an invisible line, moving from being a helpful stranger to something more like a family member. But she went anyway. James's quarters were small and crowded with 4 children's belongings. There were drawings stuck to the walls, toys in corners, and a kind of organized chaos that was completely foreign to Ji-won's ordered Valerian life. But it smelled like home, or at least what Ji-won imagined home should smell like. It smelled like food and children and love. James had made a human meal from ingredients that had been imported to the station. The food was simple, but it was made with care. As they ate, the children told Ji-won about their day. Hai-na talked about what she had learned in her school lessons. Min-jun asked Ji-won more questions about physics and engineering. So-ri showed Ji-won a drawing she had made of a spaceship. Tae-sung mostly spilled food on himself and laughed about it. After the meal, as James was putting the younger children to bed, he asked Ji-won to help. She went into the small room where both So-ri and Tae-sung slept. James read them a story, one of his human Earth stories about creatures that hopped and had pouches. The children were fascinated. When the story ended, Tae-sung reached out and grabbed Ji-won's hand. "Stay," he said simply. "Please stay with us." Ji-won's heart felt like it might break from the tenderness of that moment. She wanted to stay. She wanted to stay forever. But instead, she just squeezed his small hand gently and said, "I will always come back to you. I promise." Later, after the children were sleeping, James and Ji-won sat together in the small living area. James poured 2 cups of a warm tea, a human drink that had become familiar to Ji-won. They sat in silence for a while, just being together, before James spoke. "I want to tell you something about their mother," he said quietly. "Her name was Hai-jun. She was beautiful and kind, and she loved these children more than anything. She died 2 years ago from an illness. Sometimes I wonder if I am enough for them, if I can be both a mother and a father." "You are enough," Ji-won said, and she meant it with every part of her heart. "You are more than enough, and you are not alone anymore." James looked at her then, really looked at her. "When you say things like that, I feel like maybe everything will be okay. Even though I do not know you very well, I feel like I can trust you completely." "You can," Ji-won said. "I promise you can." Over the next several weeks, their relationship deepened. Ji-won spent nearly every day with James and his children. She helped with homework and made meals and played games with them. She taught them Valerian words and human words. She told them stories from her home world and learned their human stories. She was becoming essential to their lives, and they were becoming essential to hers. One night, James asked her to take a walk with him on the observation deck after the children were asleep. They walked slowly, looking out at the stars. The silence between them was comfortable and full of meaning. "I do not even know who you were before you came to this station," James said softly. "But I know who you are now. You are the strongest person I know. You have this sadness in your eyes, but you choose to be kind anyway. And I think I am falling in love with you." Jiwon's breath caught. She had not expected this, even though some part of her had hoped for it. "I was left behind," she said quietly. "I was told I was not good enough. I was told I could not give my husband what he needed. For a long time, I believed that I was broken and worthless." "You are not broken," James said. He reached out and took her hand. "You are exactly who I need. You are exactly who my children need. If you can believe that, if you can let yourself believe that, then maybe we can build something real here." Jiwon looked at this human man who had chosen her when her own kind had rejected her. She looked at his kind face and his gentle eyes. She thought about his 4 children who loved her and needed her. She thought about how alive she felt in a way she had never felt before. "Yes," she said, "I believe it, and I am falling in love with you too." They stood together under the stars, 2 people from different worlds, united by kindness and need and the fragile, beautiful possibility of being loved for exactly who they were. The communication arrived on a standard transmission day, appearing on Jiwon's personal device without warning. The message contained her full name and the symbol of her family house. It was from Tayo. She nearly deleted it without reading it, but something made her open it anyway. The message was short and disturbing. Tayo had heard rumors. Apparently, news traveled even to the remote research station, carried by traders and workers and the invisible networks of gossip that connected all civilized worlds. He had learned that Jiwon was spending time with a human. Not just any human, but a single human man with children. He had learned that she was no longer living her quiet life of research and solitude. The tone of his message was not angry. It was worse than anger. It was disappointed. It was pitying. "I have heard troubling reports about your current situation," the message read. "I did not want to believe them at first. I thought that you, of all people, would understand the importance of maintaining our dignity and our standards. What you are doing on that station is compromising everything that the Valerian name stands for. A human? With 4 human children? This is not something that a respectable woman of our world would do. I am writing this not to be cruel, but to encourage you to reconsider your choices. You have always been intelligent. Do not let emotion cloud your judgment now. There are still opportunities for you on Valar Prime if you wish to return with your reputation intact. But if you continue this path, you will have nothing and no one when you come home." Jiwon read the message 3 times, and with each reading, the old doubts returned like poison seeping into her veins. She had been alone for so long. She had been rejected and judged and cast aside. Now she was building something new, something fragile and beautiful. But was it real? Or was she simply running away in a different direction? She did not tell James about the message right away. She carried it with her for 2 days, letting it sit in her mind like a weight. She started to withdraw slightly from the family. She was less enthusiastic during her time with the children. She found reasons to work late in the laboratory, but James noticed immediately. He was too attentive to her, too aware of her moods and her feelings. One evening, when she said she was too tired to have dinner with them, he asked the children's caretaker to watch them, and he came to her laboratory. "Something is wrong," he said simply. "Talk to me." Jiwon almost lied. She almost said that nothing was wrong, that she was just tired, that it was a bad day. But she had learned, through knowing James and his children, that honesty was the foundation of everything. So she told him about Tayo's message. She told him about the doubt that had crept back into her heart. She told him that she was terrified. Terrified that she was making a mistake. Terrified that she was betraying her own culture. Terrified that she was being selfish by choosing happiness when her world said she should choose duty and tradition. James listened to all of this without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. "My wife, Haina's mother, she died because I was stubborn about maintaining my family's traditions. We lived in an area where there was a disease spreading. My wife's family warned me that we should leave, should go somewhere safer. But I wanted to stay because my work was there, because my family had always lived there. I told myself that I was being responsible, that I was honoring our family's legacy. But what I was really doing was being afraid of change." James's voice broke slightly as he continued. "Haina got sick, too. Very sick. But she survived. Her mother did not. So I learned a hard lesson very late. Legacy and tradition and what other people think. None of it matters if the people you love are suffering." He reached out and took Jiwon's hands in his. "Your former husband left you because he was a coward. Your culture rejected you because it is afraid of change and difference. But I am not asking you to reject where you come from. I am asking you to choose yourself. I am asking you to choose us. Not because you owe me anything, not because you feel obligated, but because you want to." "I do want to," Jiwon whispered. "But I am afraid that I am making a mistake. I am afraid that in 10 years or 20 years, I will regret this choice." "Maybe you will," James said gently. "Maybe in some future, we will not work out the way we hope. Life is uncertain. Nothing is guaranteed. But I can promise you this. With me and with my children, you will be valued. You will be loved for exactly who you are. You will not have to prove your worth or your fertility or your place in our family. You will simply be wanted." The words broke through all of Jiwon's defenses. She had spent her whole life working to prove that she was good enough. She had worked harder and studied harder and been more dedicated than anyone else. And it had not been enough. Because the thing she could not control, her ability to have children, had defined her entire worth in her society's eyes. But with James and his children, she did not have to prove anything. They loved her because she was kind to them. They loved her because she cared. They loved her because of the person she chose to be, not because of what she could produce or achieve. Over the next days, something shifted inside G1. She made a decision. She would not return to Valar Prime. She would not try to salvage her reputation there. She would not care what Teo thought or what the scientists at the Institute said about her. This life, this strange and wonderful life with a human man and 4 human children, was her real life now. But she did care about one thing. She cared about her sister, Jun, who had always been kind to her, and who might be suffering because of the family's shame about her choices. So she wrote a message back to Teo, but she sent it to her sister instead. "I am happy," she wrote in her native language. "For the first time in my life, I am truly happy. I do not expect you to understand. I do not expect our world to accept my choices. But I wanted you to know that I am okay. And I wanted you to know that I love you. I hope that someday you will visit me here. I want you to see what I have found." Then she deleted Teo's message and asked James to help her understand more about human relationships and human love. She had a lot to learn, but for the first time, she felt like learning would not be done to impress anyone else or to prove her value. She would be learning because she wanted to build a real life with someone who truly wanted her. 6 months later, Ji-won made a decision that surprised even herself. She asked James if she could return to Velar Prime for 1 month, not to go back to her old life, but to face it directly. She needed to close that chapter of her life properly. She needed to see her sister. She needed to tell her family goodbye in a way that honored who she had been, even if they did not approve of who she was becoming. James was nervous about letting her go. He worried that Velar Prime would pull her back in, that her family would convince her to stay, that she would realize her time with him was just a fantasy. But he also understood that some things needed to be done, even if they were frightening. "Come back to us," he said simply, before she left. "That is all I ask. Come back to us." The journey to Velar Prime took 2 weeks. Ji-won had time to think during the travel, to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. She thought about the woman she had been when she first arrived at the station. That woman had been hollow and broken. That woman had believed that she was worthless because she could not do the one thing her society said mattered. The woman who returned to Velar Prime was different. She was still sad about her failed marriage and her rejection. But she was no longer defined by those things. She had proven to herself that she had value. She had proven it every day when she helped Min-jun with his homework. She had proven it every time she held Tae-sung's hand. She had proven it when she made James laugh, when she healed his wounds, when she showed him that he was not alone. When her ship landed, only her sister Hae-jun was waiting for her. Not her parents, not other family members. Just Hae-jun, with a quiet smile and open arms. "I was so happy to get your message," Hae-jun said, embracing her sister tightly. "Tell me everything." They talked for hours in Hae-jun's private quarters. Ji-won told her sister about James and Haina and Min-jun and Sori and Tae-sung. She told her about learning to care for human children, about understanding that love came in different forms. She told her about the research station and her new work and her plans for the future. Hae-jun listened carefully. At the end, she asked only one question. "Are you happy? Truly happy? Not pretending to be strong for my sake?" "Yes," Ji-won said, and she meant it completely. "I am happy in a way I never thought possible." "Then that is all that matters," Hae-jun said. "And I will tell you something else. You are changing things here, even now, just by existing. There are other women here, women who cannot have children, women who feel ashamed because of our culture's stupid rules. Your story, what you have chosen, it matters. It is helping them see that there are other ways to live." Over the next days, Ji-won met with some of these women. She learned that her shame had not been unique. Many Valerian women had suffered the same judgment. Many had hidden their infertility or their grief. Some had even committed terrible acts against themselves because they could not meet their society's expectations. But now, because of Ji-won's choices, because she had publicly chosen love over tradition, something was shifting. Young women were starting to ask questions. They were starting to wonder if perhaps their value as people extended beyond their ability to produce children. Toward the end of her visit, Ji-won requested a formal meeting with the Valerian Science Institute's leadership. She prepared carefully for this meeting. She wore formal clothes. She brought documentation of her research and her accomplishments. She was professional and composed, but when she spoke truthfully about her heart. "I came to this institute as a young woman," she told the board members. "I worked here for many years. I contributed my knowledge and my dedication. But when I could not have children, I became invisible to you. You treated me as though I had no value. That was wrong. I am still a scientist. I am still intelligent and capable. I am still worthy of respect and community. A woman's worth is not measured by her fertility. A human being's worth is not measured by what they produce or create. It is measured by who they are and how they treat others." The board members did not respond well to her words. Some looked angry, Some looked uncomfortable. But one older board member, a woman named Dr. Sue, nodded slightly. After the meeting, she pulled Ji-won aside. "What you said was brave," Dr. Sue told her. "It will make people uncomfortable." "Good. We need to be uncomfortable. We need to change. I cannot promise that our culture will accept you now, but I can tell you that you have planted a seed, and seeds, even small ones, can grow into something powerful." On her last day, Ji-won visited her parents. It was awkward and painful. They did not understand her choices. They still held on to the shame of her divorce and her infertility. But she hugged them anyway. She told them that she loved them, even if they could not accept her life. "I am not coming back," she told them gently. "But I am not your failure. I am my own person, and I have chosen a different path. I hope that someday you will be proud of me. But whether you are or not, I am proud of myself." 2 weeks after arriving on Velar Prime, Ji-won boarded her ship to leave. She carried with her the addresses of 23 women who had reached out to her privately, asking for advice and support. She carried with her her sister's love and blessing, and she carried with her the knowledge that she had faced her past and chosen her future. When she landed at the research station, James was waiting for her, holding the hands of all 4 children. Tae-sung immediately cried out, "Star Lady is home! Star Lady is home!" and ran toward her as fast as his small legs could carry him. Ji-won picked him up and held him, and she was home. Not in a place, but in this moment, surrounded by people who loved her. Later, when the children were sleeping, James took out a small box. Inside was a ring, not in the Valerian style that Teo had given her, but in the human style. Simple and beautiful and strong. "I know this is not tradition for your people," James said, "but I want to know, in whatever way we can make it happen, if you will marry me. Not as a Valerian woman trying to prove her worth by having children. Not as a replacement for anything lost, but as the person you have become. As the woman I love. As the mother my children already consider you to be." Ji-won put on the ring, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged completely and without question to exactly where she was supposed to be.